Hello everybody, welcome to the County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today we are having a one-on-one conversation with David Ure, who is the man in charge of all the school trust lands in the state. The organization's called SITLA, and he's come to spend some time to talk with us today. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, I'd like to find out a little bit about SITLA as an organization, its history and its purpose, because I think it's a highly misunderstood organization.
Well, it just so happens, I was prepared on this one, and I brought a 3-minute video that I think will do a very good job of explaining how we were formed, what our purpose is, how we received the different lands at the establishment of the state of Utah, and I think that would do a lot to do a really quick FYI to this your audience.
All right. Well, everybody, now you can listen to the Lieutenant Governor.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox. Unfortunately, very few people understand Utah's trust lands. They don't understand where they came from, why we have them, and why they're so important to our school children here in the state of Utah. The purpose of this video is to give you more information about why Utah's trust lands are so critical to the future of the state of Utah and our school children.
As states entered the Union, federal lands were appropriated to them to provide financial support for specific public institutions. In 1894, Congress allocated parcels of land called trust lands to the new state of Utah. Most trust land parcels were allocated by apportioning the state into townships, each 6 by 6 miles, and dividing each township into 36 1-square-mile sections. Utah was given sections 2, 16, 32, and 36 in each township, resulting in scattered land ownership throughout the state. In total, 1/9 of the state, or 7 million acres, was granted to Utah as trust lands, and Congress required these lands be used exclusively to support public institutions. Along with these land grants, Congress also established permanent endowments to help fund and support 12 state institutions, including public schools, state hospitals, Utah schools for the deaf and the blind, teaching colleges at state universities, and public buildings and state reservoirs. The largest beneficiary by far is Utah's public education system, which claims 96% of all trust lands. Nearly 100 years later, despite selling off nearly half of the original land grant in the first few decades following statehood, Utah had done little to grow these endowments. A concerned group of educators, legislators, and other stakeholders organized and advocated for an independent agency to manage the state's trust lands. In 1994, SITLA was established and took over management of 4.5 million acres of surface and mineral estate. SITLA developed a business model to maximize revenue from Utah's trust lands. In its first year, SITLA nearly doubled the Permanent Education Fund from $50 million to $94.5 million and helped grow all permanent funds to a combined balance well in excess of $2 billion today. SITLA generates revenue from oil, gas and mining leases, grazing, telecommunication sites, real estate development, renewable energy projects, land sales, and other commercial and industrial development. Entirely self-funded at no cost to taxpayers, SITLA takes a small portion of trust lands revenue for operations and deposits the remaining revenue balance into each institution's permanent fund. A separate agency, the School and Institutional Trust Fund Office, manages and invests these permanent endowments in a diversified portfolio intended to protect and grow each endowment. Proceeds from each permanent fund are distributed annually to each beneficiary, which uses it for its most pressing need. Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind might use their distributions to enhance student reading and technology programs, while the Utah State Hospital might opt to support patient therapy and education resources. And each public school in Utah receives annual funding from the Permanent School Fund. Every school has its own school community council made up of teachers, parents, and principals, which determines how to spend its discretionary funds, with the sole restriction that funds be spent on academic projects.
Well, that should give us some basics to operate off of. Now we'll kind of bring that up to date and delve into some of the issues that are taking place where counties and SITLA interface. We'll continue with that right after this commercial break on the County Seat.
3D printing was started in 1962 by my father. We've been a community printer here in Price for over the last 50 years. We decided we wanted to grow our business and had to search for work outside of our area in order to grow and remain relevant. And we've been able to produce work here in Price and send it out all across the country. People are often astonished that we stay in Price, given our footprints. Our work is delivered mainly along the Wasatch Front, but Price is home. And the quality of the workforce, the quality of the people, and our commitment to the community makes us want to stay here and be part of Carbon County and be here in Price. It adds diversity, specifically in our area where we've been so coal and energy dependent. It's wonderful to have diverse industries that bring a different opportunity for people to earn a living wage and to have benefits and provide a home for their families and a future for their families. Our local economic development people got us in touch with the people in the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and it was a very clean process. The paperwork was not onerous at all, where we were able to receive funding as we were working on acquiring another truck to add to our delivery fleet so that we could expand our offering and our ability to deliver product across the state and into western Colorado. And so that was very important. It also allowed us to add some key personnel and increase our team in our warehouse and in our driving staff.
Mountains to explore. Adventure to be had. A town to fall in love with. Yes, all that in Park City, Utah. Start your adventure at visitparkcity.com.
Welcome back to the County Seat. Our conversation today with David Ure, who's the director of the School Institutional Trust Lands Administration here in Utah, and we have a little bit of background on it. I do want to kind of preface this by talking specifically about the misunderstanding a lot of people have about your mission objective, because sometimes it seems like SITLA is confused with a land preservation organization or some other land management. Your goals are really different.
You know, one of the challenges that we have at SITLA is making sure people understand that our land is likened to private land. It is not public land. And therefore, yes, we are allowing the public on it in some instances. But it appears to me, and also my board for the last 5 or 6 years, that the more we allow the public on our land, the more difficult it is for us to reclaim our land and raise it to a higher level, much like the videotape you just talked about. Mm-hmm. My fiduciary responsibility is not to rape and plunder, as people have said that I do, but to maximize the value of our land. And if that means we have to come from grazing to a solar field, which will more than 100 times the income off of solar versus the animal industry, I have to do that because I have 12 beneficiaries that are just watching and waiting, and if I'm not doing what they think is right, they will sue me. And they have sued me in the past, not me personally, but the organization. As a matter of fact, just in the last 60 days, they have hired a full-time advocate that this morning was in my office going through all of my expenses, all of my incomes, how it was divided up among all the different beneficiaries, and we discussed how do I become insulated from the politics that are constantly gnawing on me to try and raise it.
But wasn't that one of the original changes in SITLA when it was removed from the governor's office and created as a quasi-independent organization accountable to a board of trustees who were the beneficiaries?
That's correct. It was. But know this, I have more bosses in the state of Utah than anyone else. I have 104 legislators. I have 12 beneficiaries. I have a governor. I have county commissioners, and I have city council and mayors. And when they think that I'm pushing over my line, They go to the legislature and they complain, and then someone introduces a bill to take away my authority or to restructure me, however they want to do it. And so I'm playing a game of hot potato every day, trying to maximize the assets that we have and still be polite and respectful of the traditions of Utah. But those traditions have got to change. And that's one of the purposes why I wanted to come on this program, was to educate the public that there are higher and better uses, and the renewable resources have given us a big toehold of increasing those revenues over what we have been doing in the past. And it's not without pain, but there's a lot of also great increase in value to cities and counties and special service districts when I increase from a grazing to a solar. Example, though it's not our ground, Beaver County is now receiving over $1 million over the with the windmills and the solar panels down there over what they were doing before with just Greenbelt. And so money talks, and at least in that area, I'm in good graces. But in some areas, I'm a dirty so-and-so. And those are the things I have to work through with the politics in the legislature.
But your constitutional mandate at the bottom, at the end of the day, really is that we were given these sections of land to offset the presence of federal land to help us raise money for the education system in Utah. And hence, Utah State, our land colleges, the K through 12, those are all funded by the one-time way that you handle the land. So you've got to get maximum out of every transaction?
I'm supposed to. I will openly admit to your audience, someday that's impossible for me to do. And I have to justify in my mind the political battle that I might find versus maybe a few cents more in this deal or whatever it might be. And my board is there. I have some of the smartest business people in the state of Utah on my board, and we advise on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. But philosophically, you're right. That's exactly what my job is to do. This last year, we brought in $74 million into the trust fund. We returned to the schools, I think, $81 million. To the individual schools and classrooms, and the teachers and the principals all had a way of spending that money how they thought was in the best interest of that, quote, that physical school building. And if you think it's not important, you go knock on the door of some school teacher who sits on that committee and see how important it is to them, because it bypasses the legislature, the state school board, the local school board, and everybody else, and they tailor it to exactly what their needs are in that building.
So it's the allocations are not to a school district, they're not to a school system, they are specifically to individual schools. It becomes the domain of the principal.
The school building itself, yes. Yeah, that's exactly right.
We're talking with David Ure, who's the director of the School Institutional Trust Lands Administration here in Utah, or SITLA, as we've all come to call it on this program. We'll be right back.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
I promised my son that if he got straight A's, the two of us would take a guys trip. We were riding on the Lincoln Loop Trail outside Minersville, Utah. There was so much to explore, and the trail just kept climbing higher, right to the very top of a mountain called Jack's Peak. We just stood for a while, taking in the whole world below. On the way back to camp, my son turned to me and said, "I love you, Dad." Then suddenly it hit me. This wasn't just another camping trip.
Welcome back to the County Seat, talking to David Ure today from SITLA. I want to do a couple of case studies because I think they will help explain some of the problems that you alluded to at the beginning of the program. One of them would be Spanish Valley, which sits in the northern part of San Juan County. SITLA's got quite a bit of land in that particular area, and you're trying to work with it. What's going on in Spanish Valley?
It appears that we've hit a brick wall. And the fact is, a lot of the people not living in Spanish Valley, some out of Moab, some further out, have not wanted us to develop that piece of ground. We are in the process of investing over $2 million in infrastructure there. Right now, it is zoned 1 acre per 1 lot, which you have a very hard time of paying off any kind of infrastructure in 1 acre to 1 lot. And really all you do is have a weed patch when you have that. Now is the time to develop that ground. Now is the time that Moab needs affordable housing. And people will be able to afford affordable housing if we went 4 or 5 units per acre. Plus we could also pay it off because the San Juan County has a majority of that bond. Now is the time also that the economic boom, people can more easily afford it because of the economics around there. We have to do something down there, and people are saying, well, wait 10 years. In 10 years from now, it'll be 10 times more difficult than it is right now to do it because there'll be probably 6 or 7 times more people out there who are saying, not in my backyard. You just can't do that in my backyard. The law allows me to run over local planning and zoning. I do not, and I have not ever used that because it's politically incorrect. And besides that, I want the counties and the city's input to develop the best development possible for that area and for those people. But I'm a brick wall right now. I don't know what to do. We have spent numerous hours down there with PR, with talking to people out in the country, talking to the county commissioners, talking to city people. I'm at a loss. I am truly at a loss, and it seems like I might own it legally, but I socially don't own it, and that's the problem.
So let me see if I can get this straight. Moab is crying for affordable housing. SITLA is developing a piece of their property to sell.
That's correct.
So that people can go in and actually buy quarter-acre lots and have an affordable housing. So somebody who's working down there that currently can't afford to even think of moving in the area has that opportunity, and it becomes part of the tax base for San Juan County. And yet residents are giving grief about this?
That is correct. That's being very polite, what they're giving us.
Okay.
but that's what I don't understand. And it seems like it's the people that are giving us the most grief don't live in Spanish Valley. They might pass through it on the way to their home or on the way to their work, but they do not live in Spanish Valley itself. But I do know that it's probably a good playground for them. It's wide open space for four-wheelers or riding horses or whatever it might be. But there again, it's not public property. It's private property.
So how much of the valley are we talking about? I mean, you know, you guys are usually, what, 640-acre parcels?
I think down there in Spanish Valley there's several thousand acres, of which I think we're trying to develop maybe 200 or 300 acres in a, you know, it's a 20-year project. We have to start somewhere. And the water and the sewer, with our help, is already there. Within the next couple of weeks, I want to go down and visit with the county commissioners again and see how we might proceed with this. I want to do things in the best interest of everybody. But when I hit a brick wall, and I have the fiduciary responsibility of trying to do things in the best interest of my school kids, or University of Utah or Utah State, whatever it might be, I have people shoving me on the back end and people stopping me on the front. And so I have to do what the Constitution and the laws tell me to do.
when SITLA develops land that is in their portfolio, and they're doing it at the for the landowners, quite often there's a displacement of a current use. How do you try to work with counties to take care of that? I know that there are issues in Beaver County, there are issues in Garfield County, there are issues in different places where traditional uses become part of the mix. And what's your desire? What would you hope to do?
Well, let me first of all back up and tell you, every contract we give out for any type of a lease says within that lease we can give them 30 days notice and move in and kick them off. That's not, even though the legal part is there, that's not what we're trying to do. We understand that people that have cattle need 6 months, 7 months, or even longer to try and find something else to do that. As I have spoken to some cattlemen, if you can find me a place that's presently not being leased to some other grazer, I don't mind taking your AUMs and putting them over here to try and keep you whole. But I don't know that there's any of that ground available anymore. Yeah, I can give you a scattered section out in the middle of a BLM parcel, but it's not going to have water, it's not going to have fences, and so I'll give you a chance to prove up to me where I can best make you whole, give you all the rope you want. But at the end of the day, I think you're going to find I can't help you on that. Come to me, talk to me. But at the end of the day, economically, I don't think I can. But know this, that they have always known. I mean, some of these permits have been in the families for 3 and 4 generations. And with the renewable resources and with new techniques, all the new inventions all the time, no one would have ever dreamed that some of this area right through here, which might be a block of, say, 3 or 4 sections or something like that, now has the possibility of putting a solar field on there. I'm sorry, I didn't make the earth with the sun shining down in certain areas so that there's a transmission line going through there, there's a subdivision or substation going through there. Those are millions of dollars worth of assets that a solar company will come in and say, hey, the sun's coming down at the right angle. I've got probably in the summertime 18 hours of electricity I can put off and put in that substation. And when it looks down to $1 million of income to me in the state of Utah or as a school kids versus say $650 or $1,000 or $2,000, what else am I to do? How else am I to rectify my existence of a director if I say, well, I'm sorry, and which I am sorry, but I still have to do that which is in the best according to what the Constitution allows me.
So you've got to maximize the return you get off the property.
But I challenge, I give any grazer who I am taking AUMs from to come to the office and sit down with any of my people and see if we can keep you whole. Open the door. Invitation's there. Do what you can do, because I'd love to help you too, but I don't have physical. Mother Nature will take care of most of your questions.
Okay, we're going to take a break. I've got one more question about keeping SITLA lands whole when we come back. We'll be right back on the County Seat.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
Exploring is an innate part of being human. What if there was a place on Earth that explores your sense of touch, sound, breath, sight, all year long? So take your time and make it monumental. San Juan County, Utah's canyon country, is the place to explore your sense of adventure.
Welcome back to the county seat, talking to David Ure today from SITLA. One of the issues that people communicated an interest in was access to SITLA lands, and there are rightfully people who are very concerned that a lot of SITLA's land parcels are landlocked. Are you ever worried about finding a future development in one of those landlocked parcels and not being able to gain access to it?
It's a problem we've had for the last 30 years. In the fact that there has been an overreach of the BLM, in my opinion, closing lands that never went through the entire public process of how that was closed, or the roads, I mean, what I meant to say. But there is a Cotter decision, what they say, that we can gain access to any of our lands. It'll most likely have to go through the courts to get it done. But here is the trade-off. I can't just grab a bulldozer or a road grader and start making a road through there. I have to go through an application process of distinguishing what I'm going to build out there. Is it going to be an oil well? Is it going to be a hotel or whatever it might be? And that will determine the breadth of that road. But here's the trade-off. Sometimes the expense of building that road through 3 or 4 or 5 miles of BLM ground, even though I have the right, sometimes economically I can't afford to do that. Now, there are some parcels right now that I know that people are trying to push me on to go back and reopen. At this present stage of the game, I have enough battles. There's only 24 hours in a day. I believe these people are right. And when I get a reason to open up that road, or I have an industry or a group that wants to go on that road, I'll put the application in place and I'll push that road open, because the federal government cannot deny me of that. But until that time, I'm sorry to say that some of these commissioners are probably upset with me. And I'm sorry, but that's the way I have to play the game. Some of these issues have been in court for years and years and years, and no one has won except for the attorneys. And I vowed when I took this job, I'd try and keep us out of court as much as possible, but there's a couple of issues out there. I'm going to have to wait and force it when I either, I don't like saying the word sell the ground, or when I find an industry that is willing to come out in the middle of nowhere and set up something. Maybe I can put a solar field out there, which will then give me the reason to petition the government saying, I need a 60-foot right-of-way. It's got to be solid. I'm going to have to haul some base in there. I don't think they can stop me on that. So that's one of the things I'm trying to do.
All right. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in half an hour. David, thanks for joining us today. Thank you for tuning into the County Seat. Remember, this program is about your local life. It is the show that talks about issues that are close to you at home and the impact they have on your community. So be more than a bystander. Be engaged, be involved, share this with your friends, and we will see you next week on the County Seat.